Hello everybody and welcome to Alternative Interactions. I'm Gary. Pleased to meet you and thank you very much for watching. So please like, share and subscribe as well. That really helps the channel. I really do appreciate it. Thank you very much. Now today I'm going to be looking at a fairly controversial subject really, and one that I'm getting quite perplexed about currently. Now I know I'm a tiny channel and I don't get that many views. But I have spoken to one or two people about this subject, about sacred geometry and how it really isn't, and the dangers of this. So what I thought I'd do is a presentation of this. I didn't do a show yesterday. I was actually doing a bit of DIY for a friend who can't see very well, and they had a symbol up in their window which was actually sacred geometry and real bad vibes. So it's everywhere, and it's a real big psyop, and it really is a big psyop, and I think it needs to be stopped. We need to really start waking up to this psyop and the control mechanism that's been used, and how it's been used, and so I want to look into a bit of the history, going back to just not too far back. From my research, I've gone all the way back to ancient Greek times and before, with the sacred geometry and what's going on. And we don't need to go back that far, but certainly do need to have a good look at and establish where we are currently with the modern interpretation of. So I've done a slideshow. It's going to be a fairly long one. Please bear with this. This is really interesting, and this is key information for moving forward spiritually. We're in a spiritual war at the moment, and sacred geometry, the Fibonacci, and the flower of life, which is actually the daisy of death, the flower of death, has been used as a control mechanism to usurp our energy into negative ways. Yes, you heard that right. So if you want to carry on praying to Metatron's cube, fundamentally in the black cube cult, that's absolutely fine. But I don't know how that's going to affect your spiritual growth and rise out of the 3D realm. Now we're coming close to the end times, and we really are. So please watch some of my other videos about this. We have covered this recently with Richard in Rocking Pandora's Box, probably the last one, number 16. I've got a good back catalogue of videos here where we talk about this kind of stuff, and I actually did a live one about 3 months ago with Maten as the part 2, and we really lay this stuff out very clearly. It's a 2.5 hour show, and boy do we go deep, really deep. But I've also done other videos which are the Fibonacci, the Chris code, and the double slit, stuff like that. It's really interesting, and stuff that I think you all need to be aware of and have an understanding of moving forward. I will briefly cover that in this presentation, and I've babbled for far long enough already. So please, this is very important information, I believe, and it needs to get out to the collective, because we need to start changing the mindset and the psyop of the control mechanism that's been placed upon us. Okay, so without further ado, I shall do the slideshow. Superb. Hopefully we can all see that, and I'm not going to babble for the next half hour talking to myself to a blank screen. So what we have here is Metatron's cube, or the Metatron cube. This is also the Star of David, and it's the black cube Saturn cult symbology, and it's also the basis for sacred geometry. The energy from this is particularly toxic, and it's part of the 3D control mechanism realm, and we will go into this again shortly. But anything that has this kind of symbology on it is to be avoided like the plague. This is spiritual warfare we're talking about here, and this is the spiritual warfare. And it's been very cleverly done in a very clever psyop. So, this is the box that you need to think outside of. Black cube of Saturn. We have a tiny hat with his black cube, with his symbology on the side. We have the black cube of Merkaba, and we have the black cube symbolization within the educational system, which controls the mind. It's also part of a quite sick fraternity of the Masonic stages of growth and development, though even people don't understand that they are being used and given knowledge that's not a lot of help to them. So we've all seen the black cube stuff. I've gone through it a little bit previously. I'm going to have to do probably a deeper dive on the black cube and its connotations and how dark it is. But the black cube is fundamentally Satan, satanic. Now, this is the daisy of death, the symbology here, and this is part of the system within it, which is the 10 grid Cathara system, which is a parasitical energy that can only feed upon itself and other things to grow. It is not a creational tool, and this symbol is anything but creational. It's a control mechanism that's been placed upon us to limit our spiritual growth. Now, people will be saying, well, no, the flower of life, the Metatronic system or the Fibonacci system is creation. Well, it's really not, and I will go into that as well today. But we can see the crystal code or the Christ code, creational code, and we can see the Metatronic code. I'll put my teeth in a minute. The Metatronic code, or the cube cult of Saturn's code, which is a system that will eventually collapse upon itself because it cannot grow, as the crystal code will always grow from the 0 point because of the atomic structure of it. And again, I'm going to go into that and show you some really interesting stuff about how the double slit experiment confirms that the Christ code is the creational code, and confirms that the Metatronic or flower of life, which is the daisy of death, is not anything to do with creation in any way, shape or form. That's a big one, so please stay on for that one, because this is really interesting stuff, and quite fundamental to us getting out of this realm. Metatronic red, C3D, blue crystal, C5D. The choice is yours which one you want to take. And if you want to continue doing some of the practices that are being pushed by people not understanding, using this deception. Now, a little bit of mathematics just to get you going. This is the source spiral number sequence, or the Christ code, and this is what the Christ code looks like when drawn in the 2D. And this is the Fibonacci sequence, known as the daisy of death. It's got many names, which is meant to be, the flower of life and all this stuff. It's total bunkum. Nearly swore there. So, the Fibonacci sequence to grow has to feed upon itself. or it has to feed upon energy around it to grow. So for it to go from 1 to double, it feeds upon itself. So to get to 2, it goes 1 and feeds upon itself. To get to 3, it's 2 and feeds upon itself to get 3. To get to 5, the 3 has to feed on the 2. To get to 8, it has to feed upon the 5 and 3, and to get to 13, 8 and 5, and so on. It can only grow by feeding upon itself. There is no atomic structure, no positive and negative ions or protons or photons within its makeup that allow it to grow naturally. Now the Chris code is completely different. The Chris code has atomic structure that allows it to grow. So it'll go from 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16. It never goes back upon itself to grow. It doesn't need to, because of the atomic structure and nature of the system. This is the true creational system. This is Mother Gaia. This is Spider Grandmother. This is creation. This is a third party demonic parasitical system. It can only grow by feeding upon itself, and there's nothing creational about this in any way, shape or form. If anything, it's a limiter to growth and creation. Sacred geometry. We have the circles, and here we have Metatron's cube. And Metatron's cube is really what everything comes from, and we can see that the Star of David within it. The Visca Pisces, again, we'll go into this more in a little while. The seed of life, which is actually the daisy of death, again. The germ of life, which is actually just that inner circle. This is the 10 grid Cathara system of collapse. This is the Merkaba. Nature doesn't have spikes. Nature is smooth and round. This system creates spikes. The 64 Tetrahedron, which is just purely death, and the flower of life, which is really not. The vector of equilibrium and the vector of equilibrium again. I don't know why we've got 2 there, but we can clearly see this is a negative, dark source, third party thing. It feeds off you. It's a control mechanism. And you can say, Gary, I want some proof on that. Fair enough, fair enough. I shall give you proof. We have the cube, black cube of Satan, the Merkaba, triangle. It's all within here. All these shapes are negative connotation shapes, but you can clearly see the black cube. And the black cube doesn't sit square, it sits at an angle. And what did we see in the first slide? The black cube was sat at an angle. The reason why the black cube was sat at an angle was to create the energy of the Merkaba. Metatron's cube. Satan. The satanic cult. Your current masters. And yes, they are currently our masters, whether we like it or not. We're breaking free from that currently. But while they have this energy sucking off ours, we will never be free. So, I wanted to look at the New Age movement. and its promotion of the flower of life in quoted things, because it really is not. Really is not. So the flower of life is modern associated with the New Age movement. We're going to get into them. And commonly attributed specifically to Drunvalo, Melchizedek, whatever his name is. But I know it's Drunvalo is how he says his name. So Drunvalo, congratulations. In his book, The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life, 1999. So in 1999, the New Age movement came about and was promoted and pushed by this guy who was everywhere. Books went out, and this shape was reintroduced into the collective consciousness. It's very interesting, that. A reintroduction to the collective consciousness of this shape, Days of Death. That's because we're coming to the end times. Revelations. We're already at the second horseman of the apocalypse. And again, look at my past work, and if not, watch Archaics and Jason Brashears and his work. But they need to take as many people with them and keep them in the 3D as possible. That was the whole point of the first breaking of the seal with Apollo Pharmakia, shooting poison arrows with his wife Corona. Who is Drunvalo? Or Drunlav, whatever his name is. I'm just going to call him Drum from now onwards, because he is like a drum, an incessant drum. So good old Drum was actually born Bernard. He's also formerly known as Akbar, or Akbar, and Akbar is a very interesting thing. Akbar goes all the way back to the Hun and the late 15th, 16th century, and was a ruler of the Indian area, that kind of area. Very interesting. And it's also known as Hummingbird. I wonder if that's got any connection to Operation Hummingbird in the 1930s in Nazi Germany. Bet it does. You guys might want to look that one up. He's an esoteric researcher. I would beg to differ. He has authored 4 books and founded several schools of New Age teaching, such as the School of Remembering. School of Remembering is a new school. He's got 30 years of esoteric knowledge. Sorry, excuse me. In a 4 or 5 day course that you can pay plenty of money for. So you can learn all the good stuff that he's chosen for you to learn in the School of Remembering. Not like school that we go to where all the books were controlled via the controllers, and we have to learn everything that we're told to learn for the formation of his story, history, and the total bunkum of all this. No, I'm sure it's completely different. Sarcasm is a British trait of humour, and that was very sarcastic, by the way. According to the man himself, Drum is a Druidic name meaning a little tree on the edge of a stream. It was chosen for and given to him by others. Who are those others? Never says who the others are. I would say that's a pretty big red flag to me, but there we go. So others were involved in the naming of him. Starting to sound a bit like a program, a Psyop. Follow this link to read more on what does Drum or the Merkaba name and what it has to do with Christ. So he's aligned himself with his last name with Christ. That's really interesting. It suffices to say here the name Melchizedek in Hebrew means my king is righteousness. So he is the king of righteousness. Well, my king is righteousness. So who's he referring to? His king. Sounds like a third party or person, doesn't it? Which we'll get onto. The very comparison of Melch to Jesus Christ may give you some clues about why some refer to the Melch name title as a symbol for the first dominion of consciousness from the nothingness. Oh, he's now connected himself to the Creator. Very interesting, eh? But he was given by others. Drunvalo wasn't born as Drunvalo Melchizedek. He, as a spirit idea, took the body of Bernard. So what they're saying here is he's a walking, that he was taken over by another spirit or entity on the 10th of April 1972. It was all done by agreement, and I'm sure the original guy, old Bernard, was really happy to have his soul thrown out of the body and go God knows where. And the other guy, which is Bernard, was given something very special. Doesn't say what the something very special is. And in return for the favour, it was a favour, okay. Sounds more like a deal to me, though he didn't specify what this was. These acts are better known as walk-ins, also aspects, shifts or overlays. And when a higher consciousness level spirit desperately needs to incarnate into an adult body at a very specific moment. So in other words, the entity that entered him, to call him Drunvalo or Drummy, godlike person, was desperate to do so. I'm not sure how much of a choice old Bernard was given on that one, but the story is quite interesting. We'll go back. Apparently old Bernard had two angels or two large tall people come in to him. And then when they went, after giving him all the information, perhaps that's when he was taken over, there was a knock at the door and a man turned up. Now whether the man knocked on the door is actually Drum himself or was an external person, I'm not sure. But the person who knocked on the door, who walked into the place, a walk-in, gave him all the information and all the knowledge, and suddenly he seemed to be funded and was able to write books and do all these amazing things just like that. So he's left the United States over 280 times. Old Drum is a world traveller, helping people understand their intimate connection to God. We'll get into that one. Drum is the first person in the world in modern times to mathematically and geometrically define the human body, light body, called ancient times the Merkaba. So the Merkaba, we have already established, is satanic, and nothing to do with the light body. But he's the first person in modern times to do so. There's a gentleman who reviewed his book, one of his books, and I'll put the link on Telegram. I might be able to put the link on YouTube. And the guy absolutely rips the book to bits, because there's about as much mathematics in there as a first grader, and the maths is wrong apparently as well. That's not me, that's a book review, and that will be on my Telegram channel of the same name, Alternative Interactions. as well as other information on this. So the Merkaba, and we see the symbol again. Part of Metatron's cube, the daisy of death, the flower of death. Drum, loved for all life, his love for all life everywhere is immediately felt by anyone who meets him. For some time he has been bringing his vast vision to the world through the Flower of Life program and the Merkaba meditation. So what he's doing is, via CDs like this, is getting people to go into a meditation to connect to Satan. I personally have a problem with that, and I think you can hear it in my voice. I'm ticked, real ticked off with this one. And this is the point. We still get this Merkaba meditation Psyop being spread around by people because they don't know any better. I understand that. But it's dangerous. Do not go anywhere near anything like this, please. You are feeding the Fibonacci sequence, the 3D realm, your loosh, your energy, to be used in nefarious ways. Your good intent, your pure intentions are being usurped. This is a very dangerous, sick and twisted system. We're talking about this, Metatron's cube and the Merkaba. So how is this guy related to Jesus? In Christianity, according to the Apostle to the Hebrews, Jesus Christ is identified as the high priest forever in the order of Melch, and so Jesus assumes the role of high priest once and for all. So by taking on that name, is he proclaiming himself now as the high priest once and for all? There's a bit of an ego god complex coming out here, isn't there? An old drum, books and teachings. Bernard takes the name of drum after studying at the Alpha and Omega order of Melch. So this is very interesting. So the walking doesn't take place until he's studying at the Alpha and Omega order of Melch in Vancouver, Canada. A cult. This is some of the writings from this, which I felt were very, very interesting. What is the Alpha and Omega? Well, you cannot understand the order of Melch without first having the knowledge of what the Alpha and the Omega. The Bible answers the Alpha and Omega refers to only one or three. Now this is very interesting. He doesn't actually write God, he puts G3D. And the three we'll get to in a very short while, because the God that he's doing the G3D for really isn't the God. He's talking about Satan here. Because G3D, in the way I see it, is part of Metatron's cube, which is the Merkaba. So he's saying Satan the Almighty. This term occurs 3 times in the Bible. But he's not actually writing God. He's using the Bible to usurp or to push across an idea of holiness or connection to. But the word God is not written. Why does G3D call himself the Alpha and Omega? G3D is the only one. G3D from the beginning to the end. However, to say there is an end is an oxymoronic statement while speaking about the one and only external G3D. Now this is the one that I have real big problems with. The externalization of our powers is to give our power away to another entity that can use that power, the loosh that I spoke about earlier, in any way, shape or form they wish to. So G3D really is not God, it's Satan. And I believe that he's promoting quite clearly from this Alpha and Omega cult, there is only one external G3D, I think we're dealing with a very big psyop, and it's only when you start digging underneath the layers and understanding what's going on here that you can really start to begin to see what's going on here. I've done a matrix manifestation series on YouTube, and it's about the externalization and giving away your power, the true power within us, our connection to source, the divine connection and the only connection. To give your power away externally is a 3D trait. The power we have within us, our connection to source, the creator, is pure and of the 5D consciousness, in my opinion. Now this is very interesting. The Order of the Melk, shaking things up. The Alpha and Omega Order of Melk is the Order of Light of Love. It's as well to understand that everything has its dark or shadow side. So there's also a dark Melk order. Oh, that's very interesting. And they are doing very good work. So the dark order of Melk, which is G3D, remember, Satan, are doing very good work, because they're pushing people's buttons and getting them into the light. Whose light? Light is energy. Light is loosh. Very interesting, that one. It's actually hundreds of millions of members and the order in the planet right now, and often known as the Merch priesthood. Sounds like a cult to me. Sounds like an even bigger cult than religion. But I believe they all worship the same entity, fundamentally. So, the teaching of Drunvalo, the flower of life, and here we go, the flower of life. The flower of life is an ancient religious symbol of sacred geometry. Yeah, okay, could be. Like the tree of life. No, not like the tree of life at all. It contains the encoded creation pattern of the fundamental forms of space and time. No, it does not. There is nothing encoded creationally about this at all in any way, shape or form. It's like a graphical expression of the connections between all sentient beings and that with the life force itself. It's a third party life force. A dark, parasitical force of the 3D. Pertaining to the flower of life symbol and the symbols of the Vesta Pisces and the Borromean rings. Well, we're going to have a look at them. You know, let's have a look at those in a second. which are ancient religious symbols as well as concepts. They are kept in secret by many religious... Oh, they're kept in secret. Isn't that interesting? So they well could be kept in secret. And if they are kept in secret, there's a very good reason why they are kept in secret. By many religious orders and all great civilizations around the globe. So I take it in your civilization, everybody, we have and do have this kind of symbology that we all know about. Yeah. So let's look at the Metatronic finite life flower of the artificial life grid. It's based upon the Fibonacci sequence. It's recycling of finite energy. It's a vampiric energy, in other words. It feeds upon a third party or itself to grow. It's the geometric floral design of 6, based upon the Anunnaki-driven false New Age movement. I'm not sure about the Anunnaki-driven, but it's a New Age movement and false ascension teachings of Thoth, Enoch, Jehovah, Archangel Michael, Metatron, etc. Well, I'm not totally convinced about all of that. It doesn't ring true to me. This isn't my slide that I put together. But certainly this parasitical system has been used on and within all of these. And it's derived from channeled information. Channeled. Like the walk-in of good old Drum. Now, let's go to the first of Pisces. Now, this is actually, and I've been here myself and I've actually seen this. This is in England, and this is Glastonbury, and I've actually been here. And I have to say, I did not like the energy around this well. There was something off. I didn't know at the time. But there was a tree growing just up here, a nice tree, and the energy coming off that was absolutely beautiful, and I gave that tree a very big long hug. So there you go. But I wasn't sure why I felt uncomfortable around here, but now I do. Because mathematically the Vita is a special case of a lens. It's very interesting terminology, a lens. A shape formed by intersection of two discs. We have the mathematical ratios and square root of 1.7. But what it is fundamentally is the second stage of the beginning of Metatron's cube, the Daisy of Death. So I'm sure they built this with the best intentions, but actually what they've created is the Daisy of Death and a lens in which the dark energy can feed off the louche and positive intentions of all those around in Glastonbury. And this well is a big representation. The source of this water is like the lifeblood of Glastonbury. There we go. They have infiltrated everywhere, haven't they? And the Boromeric rings, or the Barrow mean rings, have been used in various contexts to indicate strength and unity. They have also been used in religious designs and symbolisms that symbolize the Trinity. I'm not quite sure about that. The symbol of the Christian Trinity from the 13th century manuscript. From a 13th century manuscript. Just one. I hope that wasn't written by the Tiny Hats. And here we go. Day 1, stage 1, okay? Ignore the day, but stage 1, stage 2. That's the design that we see in the Barrow, in Glastonbury. Day 3, there's the 3 rings. And when we carry on to day 7, there we have the full beginning of the Daisy of Death, Metatron's cube, and the Fibonacci sequence of collapse. And the 7's very interesting, actually. Now, I tried to speak to Jason of Archaics a few years ago about this. Tangent time. And Jason developed something called OPHUS, a predictive analytics program. And he was, at the time, I'm sure, you know, I haven't carried on looking at this in any way. It's his baby, and I've stayed out of this because I've gone down my own research thing. But what's very interesting is that when he first developed this, he was using it for sports betting. And on the first week, second week, third week, fourth week, fifth week, and sixth week, generally, there was no problem with the program and it was correct. On the seventh week, and certainly by the eighth week, the system would collapse and crash and would then have to be reset with all the new parameters to get to stage 1 again. Jason was using the Fibonacci sequence, phi and pi, within his programmatic analytics. And when he got to the 7, the 7th stage, and the flower of death, the daisy of death, became whole, it could no longer feed upon itself because the energy had gone and it would crash. And that is why the system failed to work and could not go beyond 7 correct predictions. Really interesting, that one, isn't it? And that's why phi and pi are inside the Great Pyramid of Giza. The Great Pyramid of Giza is a machine, a calendar. It's there to upload information into the holography to ensure the collapse at the 7th stage just after, and the window to open to allow the 5D spiritual souls to exit this holography. But those in the 3D who carry on in this Metatronic cube will stay in the 3D. And this is why it's very important and so important. So the fib of no chi, death spiral. The Fibonacci sequence gets closer and closer to the golden spiral as it increases in size because of the ratio of each number in the Fibonacci sequence to the one before it converges on phi, which is 1.618. The Chris code is actually 1.414, and nature, when we look at a Nautilus shell, is 1.3 to 1.4 on average, nowhere near 1.618, which is why when I said about the flower of life, or the daisy of death as we call it, the Fibonacci sequence, being the connected to the life, it's really not. It's really not. It mimics. It's a third party interloper, but is not creational in any way, shape or form, and that's just one of the ways that it can be seen. And obviously we're talking about the snail shell or seashells, tree growth. It all looks very similar. Remember the first slide I showed? I will show you again later. It looks very, very similar, but it's parasitical and has to feed upon itself. The numbers show so. And by the time it gets to the 7th, it will generally collapse upon itself. I'm not going to read all of that. You can screenshot that and look at that. But I wanted to get that point across. Phi at 1.618 is nowhere near nature's ratio, or golden crystalline ratio of creation, which is between 1.3 and 1.4, and the crystalline code is 1.414. This is an artist's impression of the Fibonacci sequence. Sometimes a picture paints 1,000 words. You're looking at Metatron's cube. You're looking at the Merkaba. I wonder at what stage, when you give your power away, you are with the draining of your loosh from this. Because it only goes one way, and that's crash and deception and death. Now, as I said, I was going to show you the spirals again. This is the crystalline code, this is the Fibonacci sequence. And it's at axis 7. Again, when the flower of Daisy of Death is in completion, that we then get the spiral down from the Fibonacci into collapse. And this is where the difference is, because the crystalline code carries on going and growing. It's based on the crystalline spiral sequence. It's self-regeneration, perpetual power source. And I will go into this. The geometric lotus petal structure of 12, the 12 Cathara grid, rather than the 10 Cathara grid of the Fibonacci sequence. Looks different to the Daisy of Death, doesn't it? The lotus structure of life. The Christ code. This is the crystalline spiral, the 12 Cathara grid. It's a mirror of itself because it will be negative and positively charged within the ions. I will go through this and explain this as well, because I don't expect you to understand that, and many of you would have just glazed over. I did initially when I first found this. I did struggle, and it's taken me nearly 3 years to get my head around this to a stage where I can talk about it and explain it both mathematically and visually, as well as by the makeup of creation itself via the double slit experiment. So the difference between a crystal and Fibonacci spiral is the golden ratio Fibonacci, which can be understood in terms of respective relationships to the creation point. The crystal spiral and the mathematical sequence of which it emerges comes directly from the 0 point or center point of all union. And the center point of all union has a positive and negative charged ions. Atoms, protons and photons is what we're talking about here. Again, I'll let you screenshot that. I'm not going to carry on. I've already spoken about most of this. So here we are again, just to show the crystalline spiral, the Christ code sequence 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and the Fibonacci sequence. You can see the difference between them. 1 feeds on 1 to create 1, to get 2, 1 feeds on 1, 1 plus 1 is 2, 2 to go to 3 has to feed on itself on 1 to get to 3, and so on, until we get to the collapse around this area, which is number 7. Now, the double slit experiment, I would advise you guys to watch some of the basic videos. There is a video called Dr. Proton, and it's a cartoon, but it's very, very good. It's shared on my platform. I've shared it several times, and there is actually links of it on some of my previous double slit experiment explanations. Now, with the double slit experiment, when they observed the experiment, we have 2 lines here. They fired matter, atomic matter, protons, photons, electrons. It makes no difference. Don't get hung up on that. We're just going to call it matter. Okay. They fired matter at a solid plate with 2 slits. When they observed the experiment, they got 2 lines, just as they would have expected to see. They then ran the experiment without looking at it, and what they got was multiple lines across the back wall where the atomic matter had hit. And what that meant was that the material when not observed, was in all states of being at exactly the same time. So it was neither one thing nor the other. And what it did while it was sitting there waiting to be observed to create something. Now, I firmly believe we're in a holographic realm. Please watch my Flat Round or Neither series for that if you want the information on that. But we live in a matrix, a holographic realm, a toroidal field of consciousness, in fact. And it's only when we observe something does that something become real and solid, that we interact with it. And what the double slit experiment does is it proves what I've just said fundamentally. So when atomic material, atoms, protons, photons, etc., are not being observed, they create an interference pattern, a waveform. We live in a fluid system, so air is fluid just as water is fluid. Fluid dynamics allow the movement of this matter seamlessly and for it to communicate instantaneously from one side of the universe to the other. Everything is consciousness, and consciousness is instantaneous. And again, many of you will have glazed over with that one, but please do go back to some of my stuff and the part 2 of the Maten chat that we had, where we talk about this kind of thing in detail, and there is a slideshow that goes with that as well. That was a live 2-hour chat, so look in my live section for that one possibly. Although it was, no, sorry, that'll be under Maten's live. He sent me a copy of it and I did that, so it's in my normal playlist area. Anyway, what we get with atomic matter, photons, the creational energy of the world, in fact. This is Spider Grandmother, this is Gaia, this is Sophia, this is the energy waves of creation. We get an interference pattern. This interference pattern is very, very important, because this interference pattern is exactly the same as the crystal code sequences on 2D on paper. So if you took this as a piece of paper and this is a piece of paper, this is a drawing of the interference pattern in cartoon, but I've looked at the interference pattern on many different sites to make sure it's correct, and it is. They're all the same, the interference pattern, and we get exactly the same. So here at the beginning of the interference pattern we get a triangular type shape, and here we have a triangular type shape, then we have a square type shape, and here we have a square type shape, and as we go out we have this softer triangular type shape, and here we have the softer triangular type shapes. This shape looks nothing like this, which is the Fibonacci. This is creational energy that creates the realm and the world as we see it. The crystalline code. This is the Fibonacci. This does not fit over this in any way, shape or form. I hope that makes sense, and it's very obvious to you to see the two or the three images laid upon themselves in such a way. We're talking about the atomic structure of creation of the realm, which has got positive and negative electrons within neutrons. And those neutrons, I believe, will create the physical, will allow growth. We have 3 electrons and 3 protons. We can grow from that. You could call that a holy trinity, in fact, but the shape is nothing like the daisy of death. Now this is a description or a flat look at the crystalline code, the 12 Kafara grid, with the positive and negative ions within it of the creational code, And here we have atomic matter again, with the nucleus, which is positive charged, and the protons negative charged. And so we are seeing fundamentally the two are the same. I hope that makes sense. So what we're seeing in actual fact is the crystalline code sequence created by the 12 Cathara grid. This is the 12 Cathara grid. And the 12 Cathara grid can fit within itself from the micro to the macro. And the positive and negative charge allows growth and development via the Fibonacci sequence of the 1.414, not the Fibonacci of the 1.618. It's different, it's not the same. Again, negative and positive charged atoms, or protons, sorry, neutrons and nuclei. And here we have the energy flow of the 12 Cathara grid. The 10 Cathara grid misses this bit, and so the energy flow does not exist, and it cannot exist. If you can imagine this being cut off and it being the 10 grid, there's no energy flow. And this energy flow of the positive and negative is atomic matter, which is the creational energy of this realm, of this world. The flower of life, the crystalline code, not the Fibonacci sequence, Metatron's cube, the daisy of death, the Merkaba. Very different mathematically and atomically, and why they get us to, let's go back to me, hello everyone, why they get us to look at, and I say why they, those in control, those in the Psyop, those promoting Metatron's cube, getting us to use their sacred geometry as the third party parasitical energy of our pure intentions to feed the beast. Now I hope that made sense. I hope it was I mean it was always going to be a long one, but I hope you can see quite clearly with the makeup of the New Age movement and who was behind it, and some of the language used behind the New Age movement, and the fact they're promoting the daisy of death so strongly, with no mathematical, no scientific backing whatsoever. And yet I am promoting the crystalline code, the lotus of life, and I can show you the positive and negative atoms and how it connects in with the double slit helix experiment of atomic matter, the creational energy and matter of this realm, and that cannot be done by the Fibonacci. Please share this to everybody you know, because this is key to the ascension of the 5D realms, of getting out of what some people class as a prison planet, and it really isn't a prison planet, but it's a system that has been usurped by a third party parasitical energy that has been feeding off us. This parasitical energy has many names, from Baal, Monarch, Pan, Apollo, Zeus, Janus, because we're talking Janus energy here. And again, please look at my Janus introductory stuff. You know, this is a big rabbit hole we're going on to. Huge, in fact. And it's a rabbit hole that I fell into, and in some respects I wish I hadn't, because ignorance is bliss. And as once you can see this, and when you can start to put it all together, get everything together, connecting the dots, and show mathematically, and use this information to connect into the names of the satanic cult, third-party mechanism that has been placed into this realm, the AI almost, the negative AI. Jason Boucher's in Archaics refers to this energy as AIX. Well, the Fibonacci sequence is actually AIX. The daisy of death is AIX. And that's where AIX gets its energy from, because it's a third-party interloper. And I could go all the way back into religion and show lots of religious stuff which connect all this together. And believe me, I have done the research, and I have all the research sat there. It's just such a big one. It would take hours and hours to present it. And I'm, at the moment, although it would be an awesome work, and you, the Femi audience, you're amazing. My audience, you're amazing people. But for that kind of work to go out, I want it to be to a larger audience, because I think it needs to be. Okay, so I am holding a lot of information back. You're just seeing the little tidbits of what I've got. It gets much deeper and much darker. But remember, once you know this stuff, once you see this stuff, you can make a positive, informed decision on where you wish to place your power or not. And for me personally, my power is never given away freely. I do not externalize my power. My connection is with Source and my higher self connection. Now, I hope you enjoyed that presentation. I hope it made sense, and I hope you understand why I'm so upset and annoyed with the New Age and the Psyop that's been pertained. The information is now out there. We're trying to get the information out there. One of my followers, she sent me, thank you very much, she sent me a video where this guy's talking about the crystalline code, and although he may not be doing it in exactly the same way I have and hasn't put all the bits together, he knew that the Chris code was positive and the Fibonacci really was not. And that's amazing, that's brilliant. But the more we start to push the truth, the more the kickback we're going to get, and the bigger the Psyop is going to wind itself up. So be very mindful of gatekeepers who are there to make sure that the third party, Metatronic, satanic cult energy maintains. Be very wary of those gatekeepers. We have this. There's no issues. Once the information becomes known and you can see it, there is no power that can be taken from you. We see this. We know this. When you meditate, do not meditate or go elsewhere. Meditate within yourself, via your higher self only, please. It's the way forward. Your higher self loves you. Your higher self is you in a higher spiritual context, and only wants the best from you. Trust your gut and your instincts. And with that, love, light and blessings, everybody. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation. Please like, share and subscribe, I appreciate you all. Thank you very much. Blessings and bye.